It is our third of our extraordinary series of Praying Together in Jerusalem in conjunction with the Friends in Faith, Friends Across Faith initiative. And we began the weekly series rather than just our monthly series in response to the eruption of conflict, war, and the terrible events of October 7th. But although that was our motivation for going weekly, we have recognized and continue to recognize that this is not the only conflict in the world. And when we pray and when we reflect, we remember that, and I said this last week, and unfortunately, I think I have to keep saying it, the war in Ukraine didn't end. No, it didn't switch wars. There are many other places in the world where there is conflict, and there are places in the world where there is disease and oppression and other forms of suffering. And so when we pray for this part of the world to be restored to peace, we are also praying for every part of the world to be restored to peace. And I think that's a very important principle from Elijah Interfaith, which is, although based in Jerusalem, an international organization, and believes that we don't limit our prayers to a particular area. We have Sister Luc here, and she's going to be our main teacher when we get to the teaching and conversation part of the event. But today, as promised, we said that we would begin with a prayer. And I am so delighted to welcome Fr Russ McDougall back to offer the prayer, because Fr Russ, as many of you will know, is one of the founders of Praying Together in Jerusalem, when he was in Jerusalem as rector of the Tantur Ecumenical Institute. And we always welcome him as part of our family, a part of our community. And Fr Russ has found himself at this time teaching when Praying Together in Jerusalem is scheduled. So he can't join us most of the time, but he's done something very, very clever and very moving and significant for us today. He's brought his class with him, or some of his class with him, so that he can participate in the opening of this event. Elizabeth, I'm getting noise. Somebody's not muted. Can we see where that's coming from, please? Thank you very much indeed. So now I'm going to ask Elizabeth actually to take the spotlight off me, put it on Fr Russ, and then after he has prayed for us, then we'll hear a response to that prayer, which I'll introduce in a moment. So let's start with Fr Russ.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's a blessing to be able to join all of you. We're kind of seated in a semicircle here, so you won't be able to see everybody, but I'll try to move around a little bit too. I spoke with my class ahead of time, and it turns out this is not a group of singers, but so I think I'm probably going to be singing alone here, and I ask all of you not to laugh at me, please. They haven't heard me sing before. But the prayer that I'm offering has been called the Peace Prayer of Saint Francis. And just a word about that, because more likely that this prayer does not come actually from Saint Francis, but most likely is a prayer from the early part of the 20th century, and probably composed in wake of the terrible violence of the First World War, which up to that time was the bloodiest war that the world had ever seen. So it is a beautiful prayer. It's also not exactly a prayer for peace. It's actually a prayer that we might be peacemakers, peace builders, that that peace is more than just the absence of conflict. Peace comes as a result of an active gift of self, an active gift of love for others by not returning hatred for hatred, by not injuring in response to injury, but by breaking the cycle of violence, and so offering others a reason to hope that there actually is a path forward to peace. So it's really a prayer that we might be peacemakers, peace builders, and that's what I share with you now. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring your love. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. O Master, grant that I may never seek so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, in giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Russ, and thank you to your students for being with us. A couple of nights ago, I had the tremendous privilege of interviewing Rabbi Art Green, who will be our teacher next week. Like Russ, Rabbi Art is teaching at this time and can't join us live because unfortunately he's unable to bring his class with him. So he has recorded a most fantastic teaching for us that we will use next week. But in the meantime, he commented on this prayer, and I'm going to ask Elizabeth if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, and this is a taste, I think, of what we're going to hear from Art next week, his response. Russ, if you can, and you and students can stay to hear what Art says about this prayer. I think it would be worthwhile, and you may want to even comment on his comment. So Elizabeth, if you could share your screen.
Okay, we'll stay for a little bit longer. Sure.
Thank you.
Can you hear okay?
There we go.
Are you able to see my screen?
It just says you've started screen. There we go. There
Yes.
we go.
Let me know if you don't hear the sound.
Make me an instrument is a very beautiful kind of petition. It's the kind of thing you ask God to do. You don't say, God, give me this, God, give me that. You say, make me an instrument of your peace. Let me be a kli, that's an instrument in Hebrew, for you to use to bring about peace. And that means let me help people recognize that the other is the image of God. And that will be a means to bringing about peace between human beings. So how can I be an instrument for that? And everybody has another answer. I'm a teacher. I can do it through teaching. I can do it through writing. Other people do it through getting out there and bringing water and food to people who need food and water. Other people get out there by healing the wounded. I see all these I see all these people now, these medics, and unfortunately, sadly, these people who engage in the burial of the dead and identifying dead bodies, and the people risking their own lives to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza, to people in need, and that too is a danger. And all of them are somehow being instruments of God's peace. And help me to find the way in which I can be such an instrument is what the prayer is all about.
So each of us, as a unique human creation, has a unique role.
Has a unique way of being the instrument of God's peace.
Mm. Thank you for those brief words, those few words. We look forward to hearing a bit larger discussion with you when we gather together next week for Praying Together in Jerusalem. It's been a pleasure talking to you very briefly this evening. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks so much. Right. I thought that Rabbi Art's comments were very powerful. What are we praying for? Not that God gives us, but that God enables us. Russ, did you want to make any comment on that?
Just that I think he's exactly right. I think that's the substance of the prayer. It's not for God to sort of impose a peace on us, but to enable us to be people who build peace, people who help each other to find a fuller life. So I think he's exactly right. That's the essence of the prayer.
Thank you. You know, this was a perfect segue, of course, to introduce our main teacher for today, Sr Luc, because we are going to continue the discussion about the essence of what it is to be human. And one of the things that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks is the unique contribution that each individual can make to the human family, and that each person is inspired or enlightened by the divine within. What does that mean for that person? So I'm going to ask Sr Luc to join me, meaning Elizabeth's going to spotlight you, bring you into the conversation. And thank you so much for being with us. Even though we only met in person a couple of months ago, I feel like I've known you for a long time. And I've certainly felt inspired and moved every time you've led us in conversation and in meditation, prayer. And we're very grateful that you're part of the Elijah family. Thank you so much. We've been talking, as you know, about the idea of human beings being created, the language that we use in the Judeo-Christian context is in the image of God. But even last week, Marcia, from the Muslim perspective, spoke about the slight problematic that we might think image has something to do with image, and preferred to use the idea of divine spark. And I know that in Buddhism, the language where we talk about the divinity or the special quality of the human being is different. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the concept, or your thoughts as a Buddhist nun, on the concept of the human being and the divine spark in whatever language is appropriate. So over to you, sister. Oh, and maybe I didn't mention you're from Plum Village. You may want to, before you speak, just introduce yourself just a little more, who you are.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I feel very grateful to be with you all and to continue my journey. And so I ordained in 2008 with Thich Nhat Hanh, Venerable Zen Thich Nhat Hanh, that has founded the tradition of Plum Village. which is a Buddhist tradition, and more specifically a Mahayana tradition with a Zen flavor and a little bit of Theravada. So our teacher was in exile. He come from Vietnam, and so he has gone through the French War, great famine during that time, and then of course the US war in Vietnam. And so he has, that's why I think he has compiled a little bit of what can be helpful and useful for us, more specifically in the West, with Western mind, with Christianity background or Judaism or Islamic background. Because one of the main purpose of this journey is to find ways to relieve suffering inside, outside, and at the same time, to know how to cultivate, nourish happiness, joy, peace at every moment of our life. We don't wait until something happens. It might be too late. And so there are many teachings in Buddhism, and I just know just a little bit, but maybe enough for me to be happy. And so in relation with the quality of the divine, of God, I think we would all agree to say that one main characteristic of God is love. And the good news is that we all have this capacity to love. And so in Buddhism, we do have a teaching that is called the four immeasurables, the four limitless mind, the four divine dwelling. So I'm going to share a little slide. Can you see? Yes. So these are like the four main characteristic element of what we call true love in Buddhism. Loving kindness, which is metta, compassion, which is karuna, joy, which is mudita, and equanimity, which is upeksha. So these are like, we could really see the relation between God, that is love, maybe unconditional love, unlimited love for all of us. We are all children of God, sons and daughters of God. And so we believe that we all have this capacity to develop more and more and more and more loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so our teacher also described a little bit, very in a simple way, but very concrete. Loving kindness is the intention and the capacity, because sometimes we have the intention, but we don't have the capacity to offer kindness, to offer joy, to offer happiness to others. And of course, to oneself first. Compassion is the intention and the capacity to relieve the suffering of the one that is next to us, of our beloved ones, of the ones that are far away, but maybe we can be in contact with. The joy, if love doesn't bring joy, is not true love. Okay? And the idea of equanimity is this idea of everything is calm, peace. We accept suffering and happiness. Of course, we don't want to create more suffering. There's enough suffering, okay? But when something happened, I'm going to stop sharing. So when something happened to us all the time, how can we learn the art of being peace with what is happening instead of reacting? And maybe this is also where I'm going to move to a big concept, which is nirvana, right? So there are many definitions of nirvana. And for our teacher, and mostly in the Zen tradition, nirvana is not something we attain later or when we pass away. Nirvana is here and now, in the midst of suffering. We have a beautiful image in Buddhism. We use a lot of images, like in many other religion and tradition. The image of the lotus, a beautiful flower lotus. And its roots is in the mud, which our mind consider as dirty. But the beauty of that flower is coming from the mud. We don't grow lotus flower on marble or on gold or on, something like that. The lotus flower needs the mud. Just like our deeper level of happiness and joy needs suffering. And what I mean is when we are able to understand where the suffering comes from, then we can transform that suffering into something beautiful, into love, into joy, into coming together and celebrate life, for example. And so that idea of nirvana in the here and now, in the present moment, it's also one idea that our teacher, I don't know if it's an idea that we find in Christianity, so I'm not going to go there. but the kingdom of heaven is already there. We don't need to wait to die to enjoy the beauty of life, to enjoy all the beautiful qualities we have inside. And so the question is, how do we do? And again, there are many paths and many opportunities, but we need to be present. We need to be aware of how we react with our speech, with our bodily actions. What do we do? And with the root, which is our mind. And so There are mainly 3 roots in Buddhism for what we call suffering, which is desire, never content, always wanting more or less, something different, being in another place. Illusion, ignorance, which mainly is caused by our dualistic thinking, which create a lot of separation. And we can see it even more right now. It seems like the world is split in 2. And as spiritual seeker, or for those who want to be close to God, to be an instrument of peace, of love, of joy, of reconciliation, we have to step back, to take a moment, to calm down all the confusion that is happening around the world right now, before we speak, before we act, because we may say things that will not be helpful. And we know that the present moment is the future, right? What is happening now is maybe because of what happened in the future, and what we are doing today will be the causes for the future. So even if we don't know what to do, even if we feel we don't have the solution, or maybe we feel we have the solution, but we don't have access to power, in the midst of the confusion, just maybe being peace, that will already be helpful. True peace inside. Coming back to the breath, to the body, the sensation of the body, the feelings, all the feelings that I have, that we all have, collectively, individually, and just embracing all what is happening.
You've brought so many thoughts. I have so many questions buzzing around, and I'm going to encourage other people also, if you have questions, to indicate that you do. But before we move to the larger group, you spoke in the beginning about love and peace as somehow being inherently part of the human being, those 4 levels of love and peace. And then you said something else. You said, but we also have this desire which undermines. And I was wondering whether you were really describing something that we discussed a lot in the Judeo-Christian and Muslim traditions about a human being having both, if you like, positive and negative forces within them competing. And somehow we have to activate one over the other. Is that a fair interpretation of what you were saying?
Thank you. So we do have the seed of awakening, and which is body. Okay, that's what Buddha means, the awakened one. So we all have this awakening seed in us. Love, compassion, peace, forgiveness, understanding, wisdom. And we have what we call in Buddhism, Mara, temptation, corruption, wrong thinking, wrong perception, being blind, being overwhelmed and confused. And that's why in my tradition, mindfulness, it's a key element. To be aware of, okay, right now I am confused. Right now there is anger, there is sadness, there is despair. or there is joy, there is happiness. But when we are aware of what is happening in us, in our body, in our mind, feelings, perceptions, it's very helpful for us to know, okay, I need to stop. I just need to take some time before I act. And when I say action, is speech or bodily action. And maybe one more thing, if I have time, maybe I would like to share something that we call the 4 kinds of nutriment. A very simple teaching in Buddhism is nothing can survive without food, including love, peace, joy. We have to give them food. Otherwise, it will be like the flower. If you are in a relationship, a couple relationship or friendship, you know, you have to nourish each other. Otherwise, it's not going to last long. And it's the same for anger, discrimination, violence, wrong desire, because there is a beautiful desire if we, you know, have a beautiful aspiration. So desire is not only negative. So I'm going to share. Okay, you can see? Yes. So the first kind of nutriment, of course, is just edible food, what we eat. And for example, in Buddhism, and at least in my tradition, so we practice being vegetarian. And also, when we know all, you know, the suffering that the cows and where the meat, how the meat is produced, somehow we also eat all this suffering and violence. So mindful consumption in terms of what we eat is very important to take care of our health, physical health, and also to take care of course, the earth and all other living beings. Then we have the sense impressions. These are quite simple teaching, but very, very effective. What you see, what you hear is entering your consciousness. And then it waters either positive seeds of love, peace, joy, or seeds of anger, frustration, sadness, despair, fear, anxiety. And so again, with the energy of mindfulness, awareness, I can see, oh, why am I so, I don't know, anxious or fearful right now? Maybe 1 month ago I was okay, and then I feel something is not as peaceful as before. And it happened to me one time, really, I really did that exercise. And I've noticed that I was spending a lot of time, I shouldn't say that because I shouldn't spend that much time on Facebook. And not really, you know, filter. So I was absorbing a lot of, you know, negative news, a lot of sadness, a lot of, and it was too much for me. And then at some point it's overflow, and then, you know, I was not peaceful. But then I recognize, and I make the commitment, like you say, Peter, to make the choice. I cut the root, and then I make the commitment for 3 months. I'm not going to use Facebook, and then suddenly, all these seeds of anxiety and despair and sadness come down, and then the seeds of, and then there were more space for other seeds to bloom. So being aware of also what we think, because what we think is feeding ourselves, the conversation we have with others. Okay, so this is for the sense impression. And then we have the volition. So the volition is like a deep desire. If we have a deep desire to help, it's beautiful. If we have a deep desire to revenge, maybe this is also, you know, a volition, but it's not going to help. So to look into our deep desire, what do we really deeply want? What do we want to do with our life? And then the food of consciousness, mostly collective consciousness. We are not separate from the others. We may think, you know, I am this body, I am me, and, you know, I am not you. But our consciousness, collective consciousness, is feeding our individual consciousness. And vice versa, our individual consciousness can nourish the collective. And so this is our duty as spiritual seekers, as religious, as those who want to be close to the divine, to God, to what is beautiful, good. This is our job to nourish in a beautiful way the collective consciousness.
So I've understood then that in order to work against what might be our negative desire, we have to deny it nourishment. So if we deny the negative nourishment and nourish the positive, that will enable us to grow those seeds. You said something a moment ago about good being connected with a desire to be with God. It was just a line that you just threw away a moment, but I'd like to go back to this God, because what we were talking about in terms of both Judaism, Christianity, and also Islam was the idea of somehow God within. And I'm wondering, what is the relationship, or when you use this language, you know, you said be close to God, that implies the God without, perhaps. Is it within, without? In what way is the human being infused with the divine or something godly?
So you see, for example, the within without is our dualistic thinking. But we also need it, you know, to just have normal conversation, otherwise. But yeah, for us is our own capacity to awaken. And but our aim, if we do have an aim, purpose, is more like in our day-to-day, in our daily interaction, in our very simple interaction. And, you know, it's like some example of Jesus washes the feet of his disciple, or St. Francis being with the lepers, you know. So we do have a lot of examples of the expression of what we can call God, or just simply love. And love as being as inclusive as possible. And this is where we need a lot of, sometimes a lot of strength from within to remain stable in order not to, our teacher really, who has gone through 2 wars, he managed not to take side. And for us, brothers and sisters, whenever we go to Israel, Palestine, this is our responsibility not to take side and to offer the teaching for Israeli and for Palestinian. The same. Because we know we are all human and we all need to understand, to love, to be joyful, to be peaceful.
Without going too much on this particular conflict, though, I think there's a minor contradiction of what you said by denying negative things nourishment. Sometimes you are choosing a side. I'm not talking about in this particular conflict or a nationality, but you're choosing a side because you identify one position as good and the other position as bad, whatever that might be. So I don't know that Buddhism is always passive, or what we use that word passive, but we're not talking about passive. I mean, what's the word? Buddhists will make a choice about something being good and something being evil. You can't always be detached from that sort of judgment. Is that not correct?
Sure. Of course. Yes.
Mm.
But we have criteria on knowing, what is good and what is not good. And if what I'm doing create suffering to myself, then obviously not good. Create suffering to others, then the same, not good. So it's, very simple. And so, and then if I do something that creates well-being for both, then this is something that we can call good.
Neutral in your desire to do good for all. There's where the neutrality is. But I think this idea, and we've been talking about this a lot in the last couple of weeks, is, sometimes it's important to identify that which is wrong and try and fight against it. I really would love to invite other people to join the do you want to say one more thing before we invite
because
others?
you talk about this. I was not going to, but I have a bunch of books. And this is a book that I have just been re-editing, that our teacher wrote during the Vietnam War. And exactly in that book, he's really taking, like, okay, you want to know the facts and you want to know what I'm thinking, then here we are. So it's not about, just being passive and just being peaceful and everything will be fine. No, it's just not reacting or not like acting from the base of understanding. And we understand that everyone is suffering and everyone needs a path. Everyone needs love, something like that. So, yes.
Thank you. So really now I would love to invite others who'd like to join the conversation. You are welcome to reflect on what you've heard from your religious perspective, or ask Sister Luc a question, which she may or may not choose to answer, but you're welcome to join the conversation. Elizabeth, I can't see any hands raised, and you're welcome to just unmute and join or raise your hand. Is there someone who would like to continue or join in the conversation at this point?
Yeah. Yes. Hello, everyone.
Thank you. Who is this?
This is Ronnie Amin.
Hi, Ronnie. Elizabeth, if you can, I find him. There he comes. Thank you. Hi.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I just happened to see this on my email, so I'm glad I was able to join this gathering. Peace to everyone. I was just listening to the words that were just shared, and one thing I appreciate about the words, I was very attentive to the language that was being used by the presenter, Miss Sister, how's the name pronounced?
Luc Nghiem, but it means energy or power. You can call me Sister Power.
Okay, in your power. I love your language. In my mind, avoiding the word bad, we say good and bad. It just opens my mind up to being conscious of our language that we use. The language that we use, and many times create problems for ourselves and others, just the language. It causes problems. So I appreciate that of all that you have said. I appreciate that very much, the attentiveness to language. And we know that we live in a society that has a lot of language. And I think, in my mind, that words form and shape our minds, whether that's in a word form or a picture. All of these things shapes our minds and shapes our thinking. So language, in my mind, is very important, how we use language and being conscious of the words that we use in our communications. Just wanted to share that, and I'm happy to be here and learn. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful, peaceful day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I'm sure Sister Luc will have more to say, but of course, this is something that we talk very strongly about in Jewish tradition, that words can be as powerful as a weapon and can really cause destruction. Did you want to respond in any further ways?
Very quickly. Thank you very much. And something came up in my mind when I listened to you is that idea of nirvana, where there's no more concept, there's no more words. And, oof, suddenly peace is there. So, yes, thank you.
Very beautiful. Thank you. I see that Maria has joined us and would love to join the conversation, and we're so pleased to have her joining us. Maria, please. You'll need to unmute, and Elizabeth will spotlight you.
Now, so I would like to thank Sister Power for this very clear and peaceful and enlightening talk. It's wonderful how you put the essentials of the nutrients that lead us to a peaceful heart in such a beautiful and coherent system. And I would just like to refer to the question that Peter had asked, that sometimes, isn't it that we have to choose? And I was thinking about this. It's called a koan by a very famous Zen master in China. His name is Zhou Shu, who started teaching after he was 80 years old, even though he had his first enlightenment at age 18. And towards the end of his life, his students asked him, Master, what is the way? What is the true way? What's the supreme way? And he says, it is not difficult. The real way is not difficult. It only abhors picking and choosing. If we are freed from hate and love, then the supreme way will manifest itself. So I think this is what Sister was also speaking about. The issue is not that we engage with some cause. The issue is hate or love. So if we engage in a way, it's the hate and the love which is the problem. And I don't think I have to add to this because Sister has described it so beautifully, but perhaps it helps in clarifying a little bit. So thank you again.
Thank you. We always appreciate Maria being here, a member of the Elijah Board of World Religious Leaders, and we're so grateful that she's here. Thank you. I see Ilana would like to join the conversation. Ilana, we'd love to have you in Jerusalem. So
I'm feeling very connected to Thai because of how beautifully the sister is representing his teachings. And knowing the suffering that he went through during the Vietnamese War caused me to turn to him when my own son was horribly wounded and almost killed by Hamas suicide bombers 25 years ago. And I've had many discussions with him and with Sister Chan Kong about how you deal with suffering when it's your own. I mean, Thai wrote the beautiful poem Call Me by My True Names as a result of transforming his suffering, hearing about a young girl being raped and murdered as part of the boat people. And he said he had to remove himself for several days from everyone and meditate and just go inside to be able to get to a point to have such deep compassion for everyone and everything in that situation that he could have compassion for this pirate who did this horrible thing to this young girl who then committed suicide. But what I think those of us, Israelis and Palestinians, are really dealing with is that when you're overwhelmed by suffering, your own and your friends and your neighbors, I mean, when you have friends that were brutally murdered and friends that are kidnapped and hostages and no one knows what has happened to them. And so many, it's not just the images that you get reading the newspapers or Facebook or whatever else, it's just what your friends are communicating to you about the level of suffering that they are in. And I really am struggling with how do you detach in a productive way. You know, I mean, I know I'm good at hiding and just, oh, I can't take any of this. But how do you detach in a meaningful, purposeful, constructive way to be able to contain such suffering and to not be overwhelmed by it and to be able to have such deep compassion for everyone's suffering when you yourself are the target of so much violence and viciousness. And I mean, I've been struggling with this for 25 years. As I say, I discussed it long ago with Ty, but he was at such a high level that I feel like he had capacities most of us don't have. So my question to you, sister, is what insight, advice, compassion, understanding can you share with us about how to do all these wonderful practices that of course make perfect sense in the midst of such enormous suffering?
Thank you so much, Ilana, for raising this question, and Sister Luc.
My heart is with you in Jerusalem, but my body is here. And of course, I'm not in your shoes. So please, if I say something that is not relevant, don't take it. You talk about detachment. Maybe this is not really possible, and maybe not the way. The first answer that I have is I can see Thai walking peacefully, and with every step trying to just embrace the suffering, his own suffering, and the suffering of all the Vietnamese people. Because our tendency is to get rid of, very painful feelings, which is normal. And last Sunday, we had a very beautiful Dharma talk from Sister Chandu, Sister Annabelle. And maybe I will share the link with Peter when it's online, and maybe you can share with a friend of Elijah, because she shared the moment when Thai was trying to help some 800 refugees from in Singapore. And then he was told that he was not allowed to help anymore. And that he has to leave Singapore straight away. And it is in that very moment where Thai didn't know what to do that he finds a little way of touching peace inside. And he did the walking meditation. He had no solution, but at least he was not too overwhelmed. So it's to find ways to be creative with your own community, with your own flavor, to come together or to do it at home. To also, counterbalance all the tears, the suffering, the sadness, the despair, the fear, and not just having your full body, mind into this. So you were talking about detachment, so maybe this is now the image of getting out of this and having a little bit of distance and still being in touch with the reality. And at the same time, okay, how can we take care of all these strong feelings together, maybe? I know you have a great sense of community. You have beautiful tradition of singing, dancing. Make use of this. Make use of your own tradition and your creativity, and in order to so now we go into maybe more like a healing process to allow the flowing of the emotion to flow and not be stuck in the tears, in the mind, but just make your body move, and with one, like being at the same time aware of the suffering. And, I also want maybe to see if you have the capacity just to say the suffering of hundreds of thousands of people, and not just the suffering of the Israeli and the just make it wider. If you have the capacity, or whenever, I just plant the seed, and then when when it's ready, then it's ready. Okay. So being aware of the suffering that is part of the world, and at the same time being aware that I need to touch something positive in order to embrace that suffering. So now maybe it's the time to call some friends and, just light it up. But it doesn't mean detachment, and it doesn't mean remove it. And of
I
course,
must say, sorry.
sorry. And
No, I wanted to say that I know that Ilana has channeled a lot of her pain into peace building and peacemaking. And when Rabbi Art Green said at the beginning of this, we each find our own way to be an instrument of peace. And Ilana has found a way of being an instrument of peace, her own way, perhaps channeling some of that pain, as you were suggesting. I'm going to ask, Therese wanted to come in the conversation, but she may have dropped off. Therese, are you still there? Oh, sorry, did you want to just...
If I may,
Yes,
yeah.
of course.
Just something that just to be careful of is sometimes when we are channeling what you just say, you know, being part of groups that are trying to do good and, you know, create peace, and then there is a wanting to achieve something, and then there is this strength, this you know, pulling, pushing of, and then we don't see it happening. So just to be also aware of what is my motivation, you know, and if during the moment of trying to create peace with friends, you know, or being part of organization, there is no peace while doing peace, there is no joy, then perhaps this is where we need a little adjustment. Maybe how can we be joyful and peaceful while we try to demonstrate for peace? And that's what I always say. You cannot just talk about peace, you have to be peace.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Brian, would you like to join the conversation?
I'm from my faith tradition, there's a belief that we all lived with God in a spirit existence before coming to this earth, and that we came here to gain experience, to learn, to grow, and to be away from God's immediate presence so we could more meaningfully utilize our agency. We have this understanding that there's this veil of forgetfulness of that prior existence when we come here. One night I was sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden, I don't know what I was even thinking about, but all of a sudden I could picture that prior existence so clearly that it was as though that veil had been temporarily removed from my mind. And the first thing that just impressed me so powerfully was that as I looked over that vast congregation, the sense of deep love that I had for every being there, people that are now here. And I think from Judeo-Christian traditions, about just thinking about us all being children of God, from some of the Eastern religions of having the spark of the divine within, there has to be something that kind of sets that base of love, I think, for everyone. I watched a little television news thing about a group of, I think, 18 or 20 people, I think mostly from the US, but they all went to Israel for a trip. And they didn't know each other before they left. And one of the members of the group was a gang leader from Los Angeles. And these people treated him nicely. They spent 2 or 3 weeks together traveling Israel, and lots of time to discuss life and lessons of faith. And his comment was that he had been born into pain. And he thought his duty was to dish out pain to everybody else, to pass it on. And I felt a deep compassion as he talked, because each one of us experiences things so differently here. And this young man, it hadn't even entered his mind that he could be an instrument of God's peace, that he could dish out love instead of pain. And so when I think about that foundational feeling of love for all, and then thinking about all of the different experiences we have and how we interpret them and what we're exposed to, and how the divine calls to us, or maybe we just are oblivious to it. It's easier to have some sense of compassion. And as I look at Alana's face and think of Peter's comment about her channeling, I mean, I see a certain peace in her face and a certain wisdom that comes from kind of working through those things. And one of the challenges, I think, is just how you get it out to the grassroots, how you reach out to those to people, particularly the people that are not feeling that love, and how you somehow lift them, how you get them to see that there's another path. And anyway, I just wanted to express those ideas. I think it starts with that foundational sense of we're all children of God, that we all have divinity within, that we should learn to love one another. And I've been blessed by the richness of the discussion today, and I thank all who have participated. I should say that I had the privilege of attending an Elijah retreat with Elijah leaders that happened in 2016, and it was one of the most significant experiences of my life, because everybody was there because they loved each other. Maria was there, but they were there because they loved each other, and because they enjoyed teaching and sharing wisdom with each other and lifting each other by exposing that to religion. And I was after the retreat, I was headed back to the airport with Arthur Green in a car, and we were I was thinking, if you could somehow bottle this up and get everybody in the world to drink of it, the world would be a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful place. And how do you get that message of Elijah out to the grassroots, out to everybody? What I experienced there. And as Rabbi Green and I were reflecting on that, we were reflecting on what a wonderful gathering it was, what a great spirit was there. And then he said, it's not enough. And I paused and looked at him, and he said, if we can't find a way to engage the grassroots, it's insufficient. It's not enough. Anyway, so I feel blessed to have been here and to participate and for all of the ways that Elijah has enriched my life.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for those words. I really want to bring Therese into the conversation. I'm conscious that we are running towards the end of our time, because we are going to have a meditation. This is praying together in Jerusalem. We're going to pray or meditate. So I'd like to make sure that Therese can come into the conversation. She's disappeared from my screen again, and
I'm here.
I can't see you. There you go. I'm going to highlight you because some of you may have noticed or not noticed that our numbers dropped a moment ago. And that, unfortunately, is because Elizabeth and maybe others on the call had a siren and had to run to bomb shelters. And this is the reality in which we are having this gathering. And, we trust that she's safe, but she had to leave to run to a bomb shelter as rockets are fired towards her hometown. But trying to move beyond, Therese.
Yes, thank you. I have two reflections. I try to make it short. The first one is how to embrace such sufferings, but when it is too much. And I will share with you a conversation that Alon and me we had before, and in the experience I have. We saw together that when you speak about 1,000 people killed and 200 people kidnapped, it is a number, and we cannot integrate that. We cannot. We are horrified. It's terrible. It is too much, and so and so. But when you touch a specific history of someone, suddenly, through the particularity of one person, it opens a gate for the whole people. And my experience was that I of course, I listen all the time the news, especially by the beginning. And maybe 2 weeks ago, I hear the testimony of one woman who was in a kibbutz, and his little child was kidnapped She can escape, but the child is not escaped. And the way she had to explain what happened with such dignity, and how she explained with very simple words, deep words, but also the reality, I find myself suddenly crying. I cried so much. And I think that it was only the compassion of God comes to me, because one example of this child, and now I take this child with me all the time. And when Shabbat comes in the evening of Shabbat, I pray for these people and for this child that he can have the peace of Shabbat. And through this example of this child, I think that I can embrace also the other one. The second point that I want to say is that how it is possible to have compassion, to continue to have compassion for everyone. I heard 2 days ago, maybe, that one of the otage people was kidnapped, an old woman, was now she's free, and she explains that at the beginning it was very difficult. She was beaten and she was put in a tunnel, but after the people of Hamas take care of her, and she say also they were nice. It means that she not only have some, they don't only give her some pills and food and shower, but also they were nice. And the people here in Israel are so traumatized, but what happened, that people cannot accept that. What you do? You make the Hamas nice people. You give food to the Hamas, to the not rich the Hamas to give. And I say, wow, we are so traumatized that we are not able to see that there is also, even if these terrible people, someone maybe has something human in his and you can have compassion, because he could have compassion also a little bit towards the people who are kidnapped. So it was my two examples to see, to show how it's difficult to have compassion, and how maybe through one person you can embrace more people.
As always, I want to thank you for your wisdom, Therese. You always bring such wise comments to our conversation, and you've also provided me with the segue to the next part, where I'm going to ask Sister Luc to lead us in a meditation. Just before she does that, I want to read you. Fauzi is on the call. I know she's in the group. She led our Muslim prayer last week, and she wrote the following in response after we were having some communication about last week and this week. And I just want to share it with everyone before we move into the meditation with Sister Luc. She wrote this: I see the images of the Hamas attacks on civilians and they're horrifying. I see the images of IDF bombing on Gaza and they are horrifying. It's the cries of the little children that are most heartbreaking. Beautiful, innocent children. They know no religion, they know no race, they know no politics, they just know life and joy, but no more life and no more joy for so many of them, so many, too many. And then she goes on, she says, I see the Jewish grandmother, this is what Therese just referred to, and could you please mute, sorry. I see the Jewish grandmother being released by Hamas, and I see her turn back to shake her captive's hand on her own volition and say to him, Shalom. I just could not believe that. What a heart must this elderly woman have to be able to say such words, despite the horror of her experience. There must have been something that compelled her to say these words and shake the man's hand. What was that something? And he shakes her hand back. His return gesture looks genuine. What a moment. How does an elderly lady find the capacity to make that gesture towards the younger man? Her heart must be so alive with greater virtues that she can see the humanity and possibility even in one to whom she could be feeling hatred. I hope to meet this lady one day and learn about her life. I'd like to see how she's been able to espouse these truths. And then glory to Allah. So I think that was enormous wisdom from Fauzi, our dear friend who's here on the call, and a beautiful segue into the meditation, which I'm going to ask Sister Luc to lead us in. And Sister, you please tell us whether you would prefer us to be on the gallery view where you see everyone, or whether we just put the spotlight just on you. What is better? Because often with our prayer segment, we go into the gallery view so that we can see yes, let's do that if you don't mind, Elizabeth, who's back from her time in the bomb shelter. And so she's going to put us onto gallery view. I'm going to again, though, ask everybody to mute, except for, of course, Sister, who will lead us.
So, first of all, I would like to invite all of you to maybe check your body. We have been sitting for more than 1 hour. For those who were here since the beginning, so maybe we can put our hands on our legs, you know, maybe just stretch a little bit, also our arms up, and slowly realign, readjust our body, our shoulders. A deep in-breath and a deep out-breath. I invite you to do a deep in-breath and a deep, long out-breath. One more time. We fill up our lungs with the air, in-breath. And then slowly we feel more and more comfortable in our body. We can close our eyes. And just follow our in-breath and out-breath. Just as it is, we don't need to change anything. If we are not familiar, we can put our hands on our belly, our 2 hands on our belly, and feeling the rising and the falling of our abdomen. I'm going to invite 3 sounds of the bell to start the meditation. A meditation on compassion, loving kindness, which is a very basic meditation for Buddhist tradition. When I breathe in, I know that I am breathing in. I am in contact, aware of my in-breath. When I breathe out, I know that I am breathing out. I am in contact and I am aware of my out-breath. In, out. I follow my in-breath from the beginning to the end. I follow my out-breath from the beginning to the end. Just enjoying the breathing as it is. I bring my attention to my whole body, the top of my head, my face, my neck, my shoulders, and slowly I can release maybe some tensions, gently releasing the tensions. My back, my organs. I can send gratitude to my organs. My arms, my hands, my fingers. Aware of my whole body, I relax my whole body with peace and love. While I continue the meditation, if some of you would like to put your hand, your right hand in your heart area, your chest, if you feel like, you can. It's up to you. Breathing in, may I be peaceful, happy and light in body. Breathing out, may I be peaceful, happy and light in mind. Peaceful in body, peaceful in mind. Breathing in, may I be safe. Breathing out, may I be free from injury. Safe, free from injury. Aware of my in-breath and my out-breath. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free from injury. Breathing in, may I be free from anger, fear, anxiety. Breathing out, may all beings be free from fear, anxiety, anger. breathe in, may I look at myself with the eyes of understanding and love. Breathing out, may I look at others with the eyes of understanding and of love. Understanding and love for myself, understanding and love for others. If we feel this is difficult, it's okay. We just are at peace with whatever we feel or we think. Breathing in, may I learn to nourish the seeds of joy and happiness in myself. Breathing out, may I learn to nourish the seeds of joy and happiness in others. Nourishing seeds of joy and happiness in me, nourishing seeds of joy and happiness in others. Breathing in, may I be an instrument of peace and love for myself. Breathing out, may I be an instrument of peace and love for others and for all beings. Listening to the sound of the bell, I come back to myself, to the inner island of peace and joy, to the God within, to the light that can bring wisdom, understanding into the darkness. There is hope, and we do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. You know, when we were planning this, we talked about the possibility of technical difficulties. I don't know if you're aware, but we did have a bad background noise as you were leading us in this meditation. Yet despite that, and this is the beauty of this screen, I could see that everybody was able to overcome the distraction and be with you. And thank you for being so powerful, Sister Power, that we could get beyond the background noise. So it was really something very special. As I mentioned, we are going to continue meeting next week, but as this would be a normal scheduled Pray Together in Jerusalem, we are going to have an option, unless the security situation worsens, and who knows, but if it stays as it is, we are going to have an option for those of us in Jerusalem to come together at STI, the Swedish Theological Institute, to join our Zoom family, but to do it together. There's something very beautiful about being together, particularly in times like this. So, as I say, we'll have to confirm once the security situation becomes clearer, but that option should be there. I hope that those of you who are around the world and joining us on Zoom will continue to do so. It's been a very powerful experience for me today, very moving and enlightening. Once again, I thank Sister Luc. I want to thank Father Russ and Rabbi Art Green, who will be our teacher next week, for their contributions as well. So it just says, Julie's just sent a message. Pope Francis asked for the world will pray and fast on Friday for peace in the Holy Land. God bless you all. And so we will all keep each other in mind wherever we are, for peace and for love and compassion, that we should all be those instruments for the positive, and we should all work out how to have our battles against the wrong type of desire and for the right type of desire. Thank you again, everyone. You're terrific. Lovely to have you here. Thanks, Elizabeth. We can close.